Right, welcome back to part 3 of our little robot friend. We did the modeling, the texturing. It is time to get more into details. And this upper part as well, the upper part of the body, we want it to be a little bit rubbery, degraded, worn down, because that's the part where the robot's gonna fall down on. Alright, so it has to resist some of these shocks from falling on the floor, but it's gonna look a little bit damaged, degraded, and worn down because it trips on it, right? It's a clumsy little robot, so it falls down every now and then. So that's what we're gonna be trying to make, playing around with some ambient occlusion as well. Gonna make a very nice looks with that. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial. If you do, please leave a like, a comment, or subscribe. Any of those would make me incredibly happy. So good luck with part 3 of the tutorial. Now, there's something else that I didn't share yet, and that is another way to add a nice realism to your objects. And it's called ambient occlusion. You may have heard of it. Alright, but first let's give this a little material. I want this to be some kind of rubber. The reason why is because if this robot falls over for some reason, if it bumps into a curb, for example, this is the part that will probably hit the ground first, or the head. I mean, probably this, right? If it falls flat, this will hit the floor first. So this has to be some kind of dampening material. So I'm just gonna search for a nice rubber metal material like this. Looks quite alright. Now I'm gonna hit tab. You could project that. Beautiful. I don't think this one is actually based on UVs. No, so it doesn't matter. But we're gonna select those 3 edges, hit Ctrl B, just bevel them a little bit, like that. Beautifully smooth. Alright, so now we could add some imperfections to that as well. Because like I said, this is gonna be falling, hitting the ground, stuff like that. Alright, so we could once again just hit that plus. And let's head over and search for our... Actually, let's just look into Blender Kit for that. What is it called again? The wear material. I want some scratches and stuff on it, so let's just try that one. Now, I know this is going to go and incorporate our metal already because the material is already in the scene. So what we're gonna do is just make a duplicate out of this material by hitting that little new material button. And we can now just delete the entire part that we don't need, which is this, which is this, which is that. Alright. And that as well. Beautiful. So now it is just a clean wear material. Beautiful. Alright, so we want this tire material in there. Gonna select that all. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and that's going to be our material, main material. And that edge wear, we are going to have to add a new material for that. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just duplicate that rubber material and enter that in the bottom. And I actually want this to be maybe a little bit of a different color, dirtier perhaps. Let's see if we can make that happen somehow. Make that nice and dirty. Let's actually first see how this edgeware looks. And we need to delete that first material. Edgeware, that's looking fine. I mean, this is a part that falls down a lot, so let's crank it down a little bit. Like that. Beautiful. Now let's see how it looks. I want some kind of a dirty look on those edges because those will touch the ground probably most often or bump into things or stuff like that. That's what edges do. So perhaps some kind of brownish material, make it look like it actually is a little bit dirty. Right, now something else that I want to do is I want to use this imperfection as an actual bump node. Alright, so I'm going to swipe that into the normal, hit Shift A and search for a bump, swipe that in between there, and then just set this to the height right there. So now we actually have some kind of a bump going on. And we may have to invert that so it goes inwards. And let's find a part where there's some light on it. Doesn't look like it's going inwards. Not at all. that works. Alright, let's instead add a color ramp in between. There we go. And I'm just gonna swap up those colors and hit Ctrl Shift click on that. And I'm just gonna make it nice and strong in the black parts. Like that, perhaps. Let's see. We can make it even stronger by clicking on the black and just setting the alpha perhaps to 5. Will that make it stronger? Not really. Alright, so instead I am just going to also connect it to the other material. So this normal is going to be connecting to that normal. So we have it in both materials at least. And I'm also just going to connect this color to the displacement. Hit Shift A, hit that displacement node, and set that to the height. Like that. So now we have it connected to a few things. We can actually see those scratches now going into the object beautifully. Alright, so we can also just make it a little bit lighter if you want by heading over there, and let's search for a color, mix color, swipe that in between. And if we want to create a little bit of a different lighter color, we can just make this any color we'd like. Alright, we could even make that color a noise texture. So for example, a noise texture, connect that there and select color ramp in between. Oh, wrong one. Color ramp in between there. And we can now set this to the colors we want, right? If you want this to be brownish, we can make that left part brownish. If you want some let's say, some red spots in there, for example, it fell into, I'm not sure where I'm going here. It fell into some blood or anything. Let's see, a post-apocalyptic scenario. We can now Ctrl Shift click on the color ramp, see how it looks. I want it to be a little bit stronger, move it closer together. I want a part that is pure dirt as well, so some brown parts right there, and maybe just move that to the side a little bit so we have some brownish stuff in the middle, like that. Beautiful. Now I'm gonna change the detail a little bit and the roughness as well, something like that. Beautiful. Now I'm gonna set this to 4D, and I'm just going to try and locate those parts a little bit near the edges, so the bloody stuff and things like that. So move the W a little bit, so we can now control where we have the blood spots and stuff like that. I like this. All right, and now I'm just gonna Ctrl Shift click on the mix shader in the end. There we go. So now we have some color variation in our edge wear, and it may be a little bit too strong. Easiest way to fix that is by adding a hue saturation value right there before the base color and set the saturation to about 0.5 or 0.7 or 0.8. Something like that already looks nice. Alright, maybe 1 was okay. No, this is fine. Right, so now we actually have some kind of color edge wear going on, and I like it a lot. Alright, so I mentioned ambient occlusion. Select your metal. And let's go. Ambient occlusion is something that works usually on the parts that are inside of an object or are connecting in some way. Right, so for example, a wall and a floor. That is a place where dust usually gathers, which is a perfect place to also apply ambient occlusion. Right, for this robot, there's going to be dust buildup, for example, on this part right there in the corners. There a little bit. There may be some here at the top as well, where the head connects, where this is lying on top there. And let's make this actually. Let's connect that to that material. Link materials. Select it. Tap AU cube projection, and I'm gonna make that material a cobalt chrome. Why not? Beautiful. Add a little edge there, and there. Control B. There we go. Beautiful. Amazing. This one as well. Add some edge bevel. We can actually just add a bevel modifier. And just set this to a little bit less. Remember, I usually set this on 5, but this could get away with 3 as well to limit the geometry a little bit. And there we go. Beautiful. Nice. Alright, so we now have a nice material. And let's just play around with some of that ambient occlusion. Okay, select our cobalt, Shift A. Usually you can just add, for example, a mixed color. Yeah, right, because I actually want some dust. I'm gonna make that a different material. So I'm gonna add a new principled VSDF. And I'm also going to add a mixed shader in between. Connect this one. And I'm gonna add an ambient occlusion node. And just connect that. Where's my screencast keys? Hello? There it is. Sorry for not having that enabled. I hope it was still manageable to follow. Alright, so ambient occlusion. So ambient occlusion, we can just Ctrl-Shift-click that to see how it looks. You can see we get some nice shadowy areas around where the parts come close together, which is parts where dust builds up and other particles. Dirt, Shift-A, color ramp, in between there, Ctrl-Shift-click it. This just gives it some more, and we have to have the color, so Ctrl-Shift-click will switch you between color and alpha. We need color, and then we can control this a little bit more. Right, so how strong do we want it actually? For example, like this. So we can now just connect this to the mix shader, connect that back up, and we actually can now use the metal, which the cobalt chrome is going to be that part. So the top part is going to be our dust material. So I'm going to set this to some kind of a blackish, darkish, brownish color. All right, because it will take some particles from where it wears, where it's connected to, for example, this part right there, or that part right there. All right, so it's going to scrape off some particles of our actual robot metal material, which means that it's going to get a little bit more of that color as well. Those particles get stuck, things like that. You'll have dust as well. All right, so now let's just try to control this a little bit to make it look better. That's too much. Something like that. So that's already looking nice. All right, so it looks like we actually have some kind of a degrading or buildup going on at where those parts come in touch more often. Amazing. All right, so it will already take that into account for the other chrome materials as well, which is perfect. There should be somewhere. You see, we got some stuff going on there as well. Actually, let me move this a little bit to the left because we are losing some of that shine there. That's nice. All right, I'm gonna make this the same color there. Ctrl-L, link materials. Beautiful. And let's make this bottom part with a little bevel to 5 segments like that. And I'm gonna link it up to the main metal just to make it nice and consistent. Select it, tap A, U, Cube Project. Beautiful. Right, this tire is gonna be the same as this rubber. Ctrl-L, link materials. And that is pretty much going to be the material part. Well, we have this one. This is going to be the chrome. This is our rotating part. And that's looking nice. Let's move this down so it is no longer in the wheel. All right. So that is going to be one row of material already. I don't like the material of this one. So what I'm going to do is just swap it up to, for example, that material. Press tab, U, Cube Project. Beautiful. All right, so that looks a little bit better. Now let's change its background to a new material, and I'm gonna switch this over to some darker object. I like that more. All right, let's go to the world and just rotate that around a little bit so we get some more light on the front of this robot as well. On the sides there, I love the way this looks already. I like worn down objects, degraded objects. Now all that's left is this little light on top. All right, so select that. We want this to be some kind of scanner. That's already something I mentioned earlier. So I'm just gonna turn this into a glass material. Shader editor, object, new, and delete that. Shift A and search for a glass. Swipe that in. Now add a solidify modifier as well. because we don't want the entire volume to be glass. Shake that smooth. And let's add a little bit of roughness as well. And let's actually add a noise texture. Shift A, noise. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want this roughness to be a little bit different on each of the parts of this thing, right? I want some variable roughness. So parts where it hit the floor before, or pebbles that hit the scanner or anything else, birds that pecked it while it was recharging, stuff like that, you know. So I'm gonna connect that to the roughness. There we go. Shift A, search for a color ramp. There we go. Let's Control Shift click that first to see how it looks. Swipe those values a little bit closer and add some roughness, some detail in there as well. Some more roughness, something like that. Maybe make it a little bit bigger even. Decrease the scale, like that. Now Control Shift click the glass. Now we've got some parts that are very rough and some that are very clean, right? If you want to have at least a little bit of transparency, a little bit of glossiness, so not completely rough, you can change those values a little bit. And white means a roughness of 1 and black means a roughness of 0. So if I want this to be a little bit less rough, then I can just move this down a little bit towards the gray area like that. Beautiful. Now this is going to look even better when we actually add a light in there. So Shift A light, for example, a point light. Move that up a little bit. Now it looks shit because it is inside of the glass. So if we actually disable the ray visibility of transmission in the object tab, right there, we will not be able to at least see it that hard, right? It will not be that strong. You can also decrease the glossy and it will be completely gone. Now we can, but that is not something that I want completely gone actually. Move that back. I just move it down a little bit. And let's play around with the strength and stuff like that. If we set this to 100, how it's gonna look? Looks like a nice. And let's change the color. A scanner. What color would that be? Pink? Blue? I think blue will be best for a scanner. Something like that. And I'm actually going to set this from black a little bit to the gray as well. I want a little bit of roughness in all of the areas. Like that. Now we can just go to our light source. Where is it? Point light. Find it in your tree there. We can even increase it a little bit more. Usually it is nice to increase it to make it a little bit bigger than your actual glass object, because that is when you actually can get some nice lighting on the top there as well, for example. So if we set this to 1000, for example, you can see it's getting nice and bright. This top is getting nice and lit up. Beautiful. And things like this are going to look even better if you add, for example, a volumetrics to your scene, right? I'm not gonna do that right now, because I like the cleanliness of this robot. I'm gonna change the background here to a little bit glossy, actually. A little more glossy, right? So we can get some kind of reflection going there. Beautiful. Control B, draw a rectangle around your scene. My screen cut keys are gone again. There we go. So we have at least some kind of reflections on the bottom plane. Like that. We don't have a face right now. Should we add a quick face? This robot doesn't need a face. It has a scanner. But we can add some kind of a face. Let me see. Let me see, guys. I will show you this. It's a lot of fun to do, actually. Alright. So, I want a face in the texture. You can just draw it on. But what you need to do is go to the material that is actually controlling your object, which is the first one. That we can now add a new image texture right there. Click on new. Let's make it 4K, which is 4096. I'm just gonna make it that there, and the base color will be black. Yes, we want this to be an alpha, or at least a black and white map. So I'm gonna make everything black except the face. So black is fine. Now name this face. And go to your image editor and find your face. and just go to image and save it as face. It is important to save your images up separately from your blend file. So if I now just press Ctrl S, it will save the Blender file, but it will actually not really save the changes you made to your textures, right? So you'll have to save that manually from time to time. Don't forget it. I forget it a lot of times and it's shitty. All right, so we can now just go to, let's see, we're gonna set this to texture paint, right? Make sure you have your actual texture selected in the shader editor. And now we can just draw some stuff on there if we want. Now you can see, this is the issue with cube projection, right? We have cube projected this, and that is not good at all for texturing because things overlap in your UVs, right? So if you want this to be clean, we have to make a new UVs for this texturing only. All right, easy to do. We can go to UV maps in the object properties there, hit plus, and let's call this face, and select this little render button so we can see that one. Now hit tab, and let's select this row of faces, press U, and let's try to unwrap that. Let's select this UV unwrapper on the right. All right, this is not at all what we need. Okay, this is not what we want. We want this to be unwrapped like a rectangle, like an A4 paper that you wrap up. All right, so I'm going to select one edge there, this edge, right mouse, mark seam. And what that's going to do is going to mark that seam, so it's going to tell Blender that it is okay to split it up from that point. And if we now unwrap it, unwrap, you can see it's going to make it look like a rectangle, all right, because it's now no longer connected as an actual cylinder, but Blender can actually unfold this into a rectangle because we added this separation there. And that's what we need. Right, so we can now just rotate that like that. And if we now go to texture paint, we have some free area to draw beautifully. Nice, right, so let's draw a quick face. I'm going to make this very easy for myself. I'm not going to change any settings or brushes. You can, of course, change your tool and change this to a different texture if you want. I'm not going to do any of that because this has been going on for too long already. Let's make this a mad guy. Mad. He's going to be very mad. Or surprised. Let's see. You can see that I'm not taking that much time here. Alright, but I think this looks nice already. Something like that. Isn't that beautiful, guys? Isn't that beautiful? Alright, go back to object mode. Now, if you go to render view, you will see that your UVs are different. Alright, your shader looks different than it did before. If you re-enable that top part, the previous UV map, it will be back to before. Beautiful. Right, so how do we now use this image? We have to first image save. Anytime you see this little star icon appear in your image section there, it means there is an unsaved change, which means you have to save it. There we go. Go to your shader editor. And now we have this face, right? Something we can actually use. And I want to have this as a new color. Okay, that means that we need to change the color of that rusty metal. Right, so I'm going to press Shift A and go to color, mix color, swipe that in between. I want to use this face color. So the color, I want this to be the vector. So this is going to control where this new color is going to be placed. All right, now there's one issue. This is also going to use the first UV map, so the basic one. If we want to use the face UV, we need to add a UV node. Shift A, search UV map. Swipe that there, connect it up, and we can now just select face there. All right, you guys already see it appearing a little bit. Now we can just change the color a little bit to lighter, for example, or to more reddish. And what do we want this color to be? Maybe some bluish, like the line on top. At least so you can see it, right? So the lighter, the easier it's probably going to be to see it. Like that, perhaps. Some bluish. Beautiful blue color. I'm going to leave it like this. Alright, let's go and see how it looks in my rendered view. Pretty alright. I'm going to rotate this around a little bit on the Z direction. So it is a bit more in the actual light. Or actually, it's going to be staring at the camera more. Like that. And we also have to rotate this around. RZ90. So our wheel is pointing forwards a little bit. Like that. Isn't that nice? We have an actual face on our object. Alright, so now I would usually just render this out. Just like that. I can play around with the vector a little bit. So the vector of the world, so to rotate this around, get more light in the scene if we need it. But I liked the way we had it, like this. I usually like some side or backlighting, something I enjoy a lot. Now, do we want to change the background color? We can get a little bit more of color in there if you want. I'm gonna leave it at black because I like the render that way. I'm gonna select my scene. And I will set this to 9020, 1080, because I will be rendering this out for YouTube as well, of course. And then I'm going to enable my camera depth of field as well. Alright, my focus object is going to be the head. And we can now just set this to a lower value. It doesn't really matter because we don't have any other objects that are going to be blurred. Stuff like that. We put 3. Nah, let's just leave it quite large. But I'm gonna render this out and then make some close-up renders as well, and that will actually have some depth of field. So I will be back once this is rendered. So the render is done. You can see our little robot friend right here, and it's a very easy model, of course, but it looks quite funny. The textures look great. They're nice and grungy. I always love that look, especially when I've got something in my mind that a character, for example, is scouting around in a post-apocalyptic environment for a long time. There is some wear, there is some tear, so there is some damage going on. So I always love the look of stuff like that. So you notice I actually rendered it to the far right there, and that's because I'm going to be using the same image pretty much for the thumbnail of the video. I'm a big fan of what you see is also going to give you what you get, right? So what you see in the thumbnail is what we're going to be making. So I think that's very important. So this is, this is pretty much a tutorial. You could now go ahead, use any of these techniques, the shaders, texturing for your own objects. I know Substance Painter may be maybe even more suitable to create custom materials, but I think this way in Blender you can customize all you want. So by all means, do your own thing. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope it had some use to you. If you liked it, please leave a like or a comment, subscribe. Any of these will make me very happy. And I'll see you in the next one. I am already working on the next one, and it's going to be a multiple part program. I want to show you some more stuff, create something bigger with you guys. Surprise, surprise, it is also going to be a robot, but with more customization, more things, more options of Blender, some cloth simulations and stuff like that as well. Alright, so that's going to be a bit bigger, that's going to be separated. Alright, for now, I say goodbye, and until the next one.